Mic check 2. Mic check 3. Mic check 4. Mic check 5. Mic check 6. Mic check 7.
Meeting of the Hamilton County Board of County Commissioners. It's July 15, 2025. We've got 4 very substantive items on our agenda today, and we're looking forward to the updates on all 4. We are going to start, let's do introductions at the dais first. So Christy, we'll start with you.
Christy Rischel, Assistant Clerk.
Quinn Falter, Executive Assistant.
Leslie Hervey, Clerk to the Board.
Stephanie Summerall Dumas, Commissioner.
Holly Chrisman, Assistant County Administrator.
Patrick Dressing, Assistant Prosecuting Attorney.
And I'm Commissioner Denise Treehouse. All right, we are going to talk about Building Futures. This is a program that the Hamilton County and others are doing in partnership with the Urban League. So we've got Ebony Young, who is the Senior VP of Impact here, and Dusty Bryant, the Director of Workforce Innovation. And we are very much looking forward to your presentation. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having us, and good morning, everyone. We are so excited to be here to share the wonderful impact that our Building Futures program has had. We wanted to start off with just sharing a little bit about the program for those who don't know. But Building Futures is a 12-week construction pre-apprenticeship readiness program that's focusing on helping adult learners transition into careers in construction and building trades. The goal of the program is to fill critical positions in Hamilton County's construction industry while creating economic mobility, and also to connect these participants to thriving wage jobs through unions, private companies, and nonprofits.
Now, can I stop you for 1 second?
Sure.
Is there a PowerPoint? I would like to sync up the PowerPoint with your comments,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
There we go. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no problem, no problem. So again, the goal of the program is that we want to connect our participants to thriving wage construction jobs. So partnerships with the unions, private companies, and nonprofits are critically important. It would be remiss if I wouldn't say that I want to thank the county for the seed money for Building Futures. I believe it was in the summer of 2023, myself along with Christy Coons, our president and CEO of the Urban League, was standing before you talking about this program. And if it wasn't for the seed money that this commissioner's office put into the program, we would not be here today. So that seed money helped to fuel the pilot cohort, and I'm happy to say that we are in our active 5th cohort of this program. I also want to add that this program is not possible without also partners. So some of the critical partners that we have worked with is the Cincinnati Building and Construction Trades Council, the Greater Cincinnati Occupational Health Center that provides the certifications for a CPR and OSHA 10, also the City of Cincinnati, the AFL-CIO, as well as the Ohio Department of Transportation. This program is targeting those that are unemployed or underemployed, that are residents of Hamilton County, that live within qualified census tracts, and that are at a household poverty level of 300% or below. Some of our referral sources may include shelter diversion programs and also returning citizens, as this is a second chance, fair chance program. Building Futures is a 12-week program. The first 3 weeks focus on soft skills as well as hard skills training. So the soft skills training includes interpersonal skills, financial literacy and education, as well as social and emotional intelligence and awareness. We also have hard skills training that is specifically designed to provide trade-specific instruction, as well as safety certifications, including OSHA 10, CPR, the Fundamentals of Green Construction, and the state-recognized Multi-Craft Core Curriculum certification. Once the participants graduate the program, the goal is to connect them to employment. We have worked very diligently with the AFL, the CIO to do that, and these participants, once they graduate, they can matriculate into 15 different registered apprenticeship programs within the unions. So I would like to pass the microphone to Dusty Bryant, who serves as our Director of Workforce Innovation and Sustainability, to talk about numbers and talk about the data and the impact that this program has had.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ebony, and it's my pleasure to be here before you today. So I get to talk about the good news, and the good news is the efficacy of the program is strong. To date, we have had 66 graduates of the program with a 93% graduation rate and a 64% employment rate. So 43 of 66 graduates are currently employed. There's a lagging metric. We just had a class graduated less than a month ago that is included in this graduation rate. So there's a lagging metric. Those individuals that want to be employed will be employed. If you look at our hourly wages, the key indicator is the highest earner makes $50 per hour. The median hourly rate is $29.97. And the lowest is $17.12. The age range of our participants is largely 18 to 35 years old. And we focus on helping underserved and underrepresented communities, women, and returning citizens to our programming. Some of the trades that our participants enter into are trades such as laborers, bricklayers, ironworkers, electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, and HVAC technicians. One of the key features of the program is an earn as you learn program. So we offer a financial incentive to our participants that helps remove barriers to successful participation and completion of the program, which we have found completely helpful, and not only just helpful, but necessary. To date, we've afforded our participants over $200,000 in weekly stipends over the 12-week program. We address obstacles to employment to strategically allocate these resources to remove barriers, prevent participants from securing job placements. Post-program feedback indicates that this has been incredibly helpful for folks that are working a job that may be underemployed. This funding helps with the cost of transportation, the cost of utilities, the cost of living, to fully engage and complete the program. My favorite phone call that I receive is, "Hey Dusty, I have got some great news. I was just accepted to Laborers Local 265, and is there any way that you might be able to help me with my union initiation fees?" Each participant has a $500 account that is set aside for supportive services in addition to the stipend. If they haven't exhausted that stipend during the course of the program, that is certainly my favorite way to spend money, because that means that the individual is exactly where they wanted to be. And they're on their way to economic self-reliance, not only for them, but for their family. I want to share a success story. And this is a gentleman from our very first cohort, and I'll read this. This is his quote. "What brought me to Building Futures was it was time for a change. I've been working since I was 14, job after job. I made a mistake, but I understand that going through the pre-apprenticeship offered me hope for a real change in my life. When I got out of prison, I thought I was going to have to go back to the streets. I'm free now and have hope for my future and my family's future." This individual entered the program in a halfway house. And before he graduated, he was fully emancipated and joined his local building trade union. He's actively living, has a living wage, and supports his family. He has come out to speak with me at returning citizens events, and is a testament to the advocacy and the pride that we build into Building Futures. So looking to the future, we want to focus our recruitment efforts to include more women. Currently, we're about a 14% rate for women participants. We are also looking to expand our cohort offerings. We want to engage with youth more intentionally to get more high school graduates that may not know about the opportunities in construction and building and construction trade unions. We want to continue our outreach to returning citizens. Next year and the year after, our goal is to expand cohort offerings. This year, we've offered 3. Next year, we plan to offer 5 to 6. And that is going to be possible through a partnership that we've recently entered with the Cincinnati Tool Bank to provide additional space. We have a limited amount of space at the Urban League, so being able to have co-occurring cohorts is going to be a benefit to the citizens of Hamilton County. This program will contribute significantly to the Brent Spence corridor workforce, intentionally with our partnership, not only with the local Building and Construction Trades Council, the Ohio Department of Transportation, but the Brent Spence Bridge Corridor project team, who are strong advocates for our program and are very active in our programming. So, thank you all. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, thank you again. Thank you so much for being here. I just have a couple comments. I've had the pleasure of going to some of the graduation ceremonies and see the transformation in the individuals that go through this program, not only for themselves, but for their families, because the families are there. They're celebrating the graduation. So thank you so much for the work that you do and the team at the Urban League, including Christy Coons and many others that have participated in the success of this program. Couple things. So you mentioned that you're providing career opportunities for individuals. It's not just getting a job. We've got a lot of agencies that get jobs for individuals, but you're providing career opportunities that are long-term. And so these partnerships are really important. So could you talk to me, you mentioned the partnerships related to the curriculum and to the presentations that the folks engage in. Talk to us a little bit about the budget and the partnerships there, because I know the county has been instrumental, as you say, but there have been other partners. And can you help us understand, as you continue to look to expand this program, I assume there's an increased cost to that, and what does the future budget horizon look for Building Futures?
The future budget looks strong. We have funding sources currently from the National Urban League, who is in partnership, in a cooperative partnership with the National North America's Building Trade Union, so the National Building Trades, to bring apprenticeship readiness programs to 4 different states to roll out this opportunity to folks that have traditionally not had the opportunity or the door even opened. This program, so there's funding, strong funding in that partnership. We've also received federally directed spending from Senator Sherrod Brown prior to when he was in office. Additionally, the Ohio Department of Transportation has provided some funding to help with a career day. So we actually go out in the field and meet with a local contractor that's working on a heavy highway construction project. For the previous cohorts, it's been a contractor called Great Lakes Construction. We go out, we get a full day of what it really looks like, what this job is, what are the components of this project that's going on. It was the train trestle that's being replaced near Paddock on the Norwood Lateral. Other funding sources are yet to be determined. The city of Cincinnati did come into play with the program this year as well, and provided funding similar to what the county got us going with. Got us off the ground. So as we move forward, certainly there will be additional cost. We hope that the efficacy of the program will warrant future contributions.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make sure it's on our radar as we move into a budget season, which we are already doing for the end of this year. I want to make sure that if there is a need for funding from the county, we're aware of that. If not, if you're finding national sources, which I think is great, to fund these additional cohorts, that's fantastic. So just wanted to make sure it was on our radar. And then lastly, I too noted the numbers of women that are participating, that there was a recommendation from the Commission on Women and Girls this last cycle to try to increase the number of women going through the program because it is so transformational. And so I'm glad that's on your radar as well. And we'll look forward to seeing those numbers increase a little bit as you go, and happy to work with you trying to make sure that women and girls in this community are aware of the program and the benefit of joining, Building Futures. So thanks so much for highlighting that. Commissioner Summer Dumas.
Thank you. Thank you both for your presentations. This is a phenomenal program, so needed. When you say second chance, you get my ear because it's a passion near and dear to my heart. So I appreciate all the work that's being done. I saw just one question. The union installation fees, the $8,500. That's the total that you spent for everyone, or how does that work?
That is the
That's a total.
cumulative. Yeah.
Okay, very good. I'd like to get a list, and I'm sure you have it, of the companies, agencies that have hired some of these young people. So if you have a list of that, I'd like to know who we need to apply and support more. So when you can get that, that would be great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you again for being here. Really appreciate it. All right. We're going to move on to our Youth Advisory Board update. Jaleisha Brown is here. She's the coordinator. Welcome. I understand you've got some other folks with you. So if you would mind doing introductions so we know who's in the room, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you first, Commissioner Driehaus, Commissioner Dumas, and Commissioner Reese for your time today. So today we are here to talk about the Hamilton County Youth Advisory Board, and we'll kind of just move into our introductions, if that's okay, as we go about. And we have a presentation as well. Oh, perfect. All right.
This is just our agenda for the day, and then the speaking points will be going over.
Mic up just a little.
This is just the agenda for the day, and the speaking points will be going over.
So the Hamilton County Youth Advisory Board is a state-funded advisory board.
Would you do us the favor of introducing yourselves as you speak?
No problem at all. My name is Antonio. I'm the other Youth Advisory Board coordinator along with Jay at United Way of Greater Cincinnati. Yep. So Youth Advisory Board is comprised of current and former foster youth ages 14 and up. This includes youth that have experienced any kind of out-of-home placement, including foster care, kinship care, adoption, residential placements, and any kind of congregate care. Every county in Ohio is supposed to have a youth advisory board, and we all fall under the Ohio Youth Advisory Board that meets 4 times a year in Columbus. There's typically 1 or 2 representatives from the Ohio Supreme Court to listen to the issues that the youth are bringing to their attention. Some benefits of being a part of the Youth Advisory Board are youth advocacy, team building, community service, mentorship, connections to resources, and life skills preparation. And we work to create leaders that are confident in any space that they occupy.
Sorry, our slide. We're going to go ahead and move into introductions now. So my name is Jaleisha. I am the coordinator of the Hamilton County Youth Advisory Board. I spent 10 years in foster care and 2 years in independent living. My emancipation took place without me, without my knowledge, and without any transitional planning while I was in Dayton pursuing higher education. After an episode of homelessness, I was able to utilize the independent living program post-emancipation until I was able to get more stabilized, which I'm truly grateful for. I created this board in 2022 with the intention to elevate youth voices and improve the foster care system. My favorite part about being part of this board is to give current and former foster youth the opportunity to not only be heard, but to actually do something about the issues that they face.
Great.
Again, I'm the other coordinator, Antonio Allen. I was in foster care for 3 years from age 15 to 18 when I emancipated. Afterward, I did briefly also do the transitional youth living program. I was a volunteer with the Youth Advisory Board back in 2015. They had a heavy collaboration with the Higher Education Mentoring Initiative and University of Cincinnati at that time. When the COVID restrictions hit, the meetings stopped, but back in 2022, JFS reached out to Jay to restart the Youth Advisory Board. So when they did that, in collaboration with United Way, a position was created for coordinator, and Jay asked if they could bring me on since I had done so much previous volunteer work as well. So I became the second advisory board coordinator in 2023. My favorite thing about the Youth Advisory Board is our continuous opportunities to network, gain professional development skills, life preparation skills, all of the opportunities that the youth have to speak and make their voices heard to positively impact the community.
My name is Deshaun Mack. I'm a youth advisory board leader. I joined 2 months ago. I joined really because I kept getting emails about it, so I decided to go to a meeting and see what it's about. And my favorite thing about being in this is just being able to meet other kids and youth like me that had the same goal in mind, wanting to make changes. Like I was in foster care for 11 years. I started and I transitioned into Choices Independent Living. I just want to be able to show kids like me, like no matter where you come from, you can be heard and make a change in it.
Awesome.
Rich Risings Commissioners. My name is Yane Hobbs. I'm 25 years young, raised right here in West Ohio, Cincinnati since my mama had me. I'm a former foster youth, and when I say that, I mean I've lived the full journey from kinship care to broken adoption to being forced to survive on my own by 18. I'm a licensed cosmetologist, certified youth peer recovery support, and a statewide advocate. But every day is still a fight for me. I'm still fighting for stable housing, for mental health support, and to finish my undergrad education. Not because, and I didn't finish not because I'm not trying, but because too many youth like me fall between the gaps and the cracks. We don't qualify for help even when we need it the most. And my favorite thing about joining the Youth Advisory Board is opportunities like this, to be able to speak to the ones who help shape the rules and regulations that we are impacted by and our direct outcomes from each and every day.
Mm-hmm.
Now listen, I understand being a commissioner isn't easy. You're juggling budgets, boardrooms, and about 1,000 emails a day. So we appreciate you all taking your time to hear us out in the problems that we face each and every day. And as we go through these, just remember, behind every policy is a young person like me trying to figure it out in real time. Now I'll move right into our problems. As you all know, being ripped away from your family isn't easy, especially when you are forced to rely on a system that seems to kind of go by a countdown. We age out of certain programs or don't meet certain eligibility requirements, which make it hard for us to keep going and get to that next level, which we call success. It takes a special type of person to not only have sympathy, but empathy for those who have been through these parts of the system, and to know that we have people who are constantly fighting for us, but not including youth voice is kind of disheartening. We would like to be included more in some of the policies and programs that we have. A lot of times foster youth go unheard, unbelieved in regards to decisions that directly impact our lives, whether it's reporting abuse or running away from harmful situations. I want to also pass it over to Jay to speak a little bit about her personal experience with independent living.
So really quickly, one of the problems that we've been able to identify within the system is the lack of accountability. So I actually had the privilege to serve on the committee for independent living RFPs at some point. And despite some of the poor proposals that were received, at the end of the day, everybody honestly received the funding because we simply need the beds. So we need to figure out a way to kind of balance that out to the point where we're getting the beds, but the youth are also getting the quality care and support that they actually truly deserve, especially when someone is coming right out and saying, I can't do that, but I can do this. What can we do about that? How can we change within the system for that?
Commissioner Dumans, you've opened the doors for youth like me, for youth who've never had a safety net with programs like Inspire. And that's why we're here today, to build on what you've already started. Because we don't just want to be invited to the conversation, we want to help shape it in the room where it happens. And I also want to let you know that we have one-pagers with all of our information that we're going over for you as well. And then I'll turn it over to Jay to give you some recommendations for solutions.
So one of the things that we often say within our Ohio Youth Advisory Board is nothing about us without us. People with lived experience, those youth voices should always be brought to the table when making decisions and creating programs that directly impact youth. This includes safe spaces, prioritizing trauma-informed approaches, and integrating lived experiences in an authentic way. Helping organizations holding organizations accountable for what they say they'll do, and backing that up is really important as well. And I truly believe by implementing these strategies, we can move towards a future where youth voices shape the policies and programs that do directly affect our lives. This leads to more relevant, effective, and equitable solutions and outcomes. So now we're going to just go ahead and move into our local advocacy accomplishments. So we advocate on a county/local level and also on a state level. So some of our local accomplishments is actually our FYI vouchers. So foster youth and alumni fought for 7 years for FYI vouchers. That stands for Foster Youth to Independence vouchers. It's essentially a Section 8 voucher that is a 3-year safety net for foster youth. When we first started looking into this, we learned that Hamilton County was only utilizing 3 of those vouchers, but now, due to our efforts, they actually were able to sign a memorandum of understanding, create a clear, full process on how it works, and now we're currently utilizing 25 of those vouchers, and we're excited to continue to work to be able to utilize the maximum of 50. We've also worked with DCY and Ohio's CASAS to create a resource guide for support to support youth caregivers and families on the impact of incarceration on children. Because it takes people with lived experience to best be able to say how they can support someone and what they need. But again, oftentimes those voices aren't at the end of the conversations. In September, we'll actually be hosting, we're actually part of the CASA conference, and we'll be hosting a workshop within that to give best practices and insights based off our foster youth who have actually had parents incarcerated at some point in their lives, to learn best practices and strategies to best support us. Our foster care liaison initiative, so we actually learned that the foster care liaison, every district is supposed to have a foster care liaison that's one knowledgeable and supportive person that's specifically dedicated to foster youth within each district. And we learned that that role actually only exists on paper and not in practice. So that's another thing that we're working on, trying to create a K-12 foster care coalition to bring everyone to the table and have that stirred by youth voices. We did a trauma-informed training film with trauma expert Mary Vicario that'll be used to train educators, caseworkers, social workers throughout the state. And we've done some other work around interacting with police, learning how police can better interact with us and build those trust. And then the Bridges program for youth who has emancipated. We've also done a lot of work around that to make it an easier resource to utilize.
The board has several ongoing legislative advocacy projects. These include the Foster to College Scholarship Act, which assists with the final costs for tuition, books, room and board, and any other related education expenses. The Runaway Protection Bill, which is working for the decriminalization of youth who are running away to escape abusive households. The Sibling Connections Bill, which wants agencies to prioritize sibling placements where, if there's a set of multiple siblings, we want to try to get them placed together or at least maintain those relationships, meetings, communication while they're in separate placements. As well as the Foster Youth and Driving Act, which assists with getting licensing and training to obtain the license and to not cut the Pell Grant through the recent legislative actions of the current administration. So all of these are ongoing advocacy work that we've been doing for the past several months. We actually went to the State House, met with 2 senators and their legislative aides, as well as 2 House representatives and their legislative aides. We've invited them to come out to our Youth Advisory Board meetings. A few of them actually did attend our most recent meeting, and we work to continuously collaborate with them to achieve these goals.
And I also just want to highlight that all of this has been ongoing efforts. So this is several petitions being sent out trying to get people to sign, several written testimonies, phone banks, email scripts, interested party meetings, research. We have been definitely putting in the work when it comes to this advocacy work. So looking into our ask, we just want to emphasize the importance of having youth voices at the center of any youth-centered conversations or any decision-making that directly impacts youth and the programs that are meant to serve youth or foster youth. And we're actually just asking to continue to work with us, learn from us, and uplift foster youth voices. And we'd love to know if there's anything that you guys are currently working on that we could collaborate on, that is, again, youth-centered or directly impact foster youth. But other than that, we are open to questions. We're open to any questions that you guys may have.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It's a really impressive presentation from all four of you.
Thank you, please. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being here. I mean, it's exciting to hear from you. It's inspiring to hear from you, really. And so I will look through this. We did have a recommendation recently, again from the Commission on Women and Girls, to put a young person on all of our boards and commissions. So something that you have highlighted, it's not just related to foster youth, but all youth. But obviously, having foster youth at the table is incredibly helpful when it comes to things that directly impact your lives. And those that are, and I noticed the K-12 initiative is really important because you all are well-spoken, and you've been through the system, but there are others going through that we need to pay attention to as well. And so I appreciate you highlighting that also. Michael Patton is in the back of the room. He's the director of JFS, listening in on all the recommendations. So I'm trying to get my arms around anything that we can do to assist in your work and promoting, amplifying what you're saying. And I'll speak for myself. I'm sure my colleagues agree. We want your voice at the table. We want people that have been in this system to inform how we do our work. It is critically important. We've got a woman on the Commission on Women and Girls who experienced homelessness, and prior to that was a foster youth, and she has great insight on the recommendations we're making and the work that we're doing. So it is critically important that we hear from you. So continue the advocacy. We will do what we can to make sure you've got a seat at the table. Tell me very quickly, so we've got this group, it's ORC dictated, but benefits, obviously, the county, and we're glad that you're doing it. What is the interface between your organization, the advisory group, JFS, and then some of the other, like Interact for Health, and some of the other organizations that are doing work in the community that want to engage youth? And I'm not sure adults always know how to engage youth, right? So what is the interface between what you're doing and some of those organizations?
I just want to speak to, and when you say, before I answer the question, when you say interfaith, can you elaborate more on that?
So the partnerships that when we talk about youth mental health, we need youth at the table.
Right.
We talk about youth mental health. And so there's this HAY initiative in Hamilton County, and so they need to hear your voice. And so I'm just wondering if you're already interacting with groups like that, or if we could assist you in making that happen.
Yes, I feel like a lot of times we're all trying to work towards the same goal, but not together. And youth often, like I said, we're left out of the conversation. No one checks on the outcomes. We mentioned K-12. I started in the system at 3 years old, so I was K-12. I did go through all that. And to know that, foster youth represents 46% of the homeless population, almost half of the incarceration population, there's a miscommunication between there. A lot of times these jobs exist on paper, but not in real life. I fought tooth and nail to try to get in the FYI program, and unfortunately, I wasn't prioritized. I wasn't checked in on, and a lot of youth go through that, so when they feel this feeling of disregard, they kind of give up. So maybe meeting youth where they are and kind of putting more positions for things like this, not just occasionally, have something, that's constantly bringing us to the table. And then the outreach. A lot of people don't know about the program. A lot of people don't know about them. And when they do, they can't do it because of eligibility requirements, because of an age, because of something that we're not in control of. So just being able to reach them earlier and keeping your hands on them. Just like the same way, you all keep your hands on your children, not letting them go when they age out of the system, because we're becoming those adults that's now serving in the community. So that's where I personally feel the disconnect comes in at. And what we could do better on is really establishing those partnerships between youth and adults.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And as we form partnerships and start working with other organizations, the best way I would say to engage youth is, one, we need to start making them aware. But we also have to make them feel like that their voices are valid and they're actually being heard. It's one thing to be called to the table. It's another thing to just be sitting there at the table twiddling your thumbs. So actually creating that safe space for them to speak, and just understanding the things that foster youth, and honestly all youth, that all youth go through. It takes a different level of training, a different level of understanding. All behavior is a form of communication, and that's something that seems to often be missed. Like, these are bad kids, these kids are delinquent, these kids are this and these kids are that. These kids have been through something and they're trying to communicate something with you and they don't have the words to articulate it. So it's our job as safe adults, as the people that's in charge, to understand a trauma-informed approach to help create these safe spaces, to create these partnerships, to bring youth to the table, and that will bring everything full circle.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Commissioner Summer-Dumas.
Thank you, all of you, for your presentation. And I like your logo, Live United. That's what it's all about. I talked earlier about Second Chance was a passion of mine, but youth is right on the same line with Second Chance. So I appreciate the shout out about Inspire. I think we've impacted lots of young people with that. Just the power that you guys and girls have is unbelievable. Just a quick story. I was invited out over the weekend to speak to about 10, and they happen to be young ladies from age 10 to 14. And when I went in, I said, I'm here to talk to you, but I want you to talk to me. They couldn't believe it, and what I will say, I'm gonna pass the information on. I was blown out my seat. I've worked with youth for almost 40 years. But the things they told me about what's going on in the community, in schools, why the violence is going on, and they felt open enough to tell me, I am definitely going to pass that information on. So you guys, I guess I was trying to think of an acronym for YAB other than that. But anyway, you guys are so powerful, and keep doing what you're doing, and you're making a great impact. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for your time.
Commissioner Reese.
Just kidding.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what my colleague said. But this report has a lot of action. Serving at the House of Representatives, state representatives, to see you go up there and advocate on the state laws that impact us. We're kind of like the franchise of like a McDonald's, The state has the laws and we have to implement them. They have the funding and we have to implement what they have. So also understanding, challenging some of these bills that will be coming forward and being able to hear from you all directly to the people that are actually writing these laws. So that's a big deal. And I want to congratulate you and look at the body of work that you guys have done and impacted and gotten results. I think that's very, very important. The other thing, though, I do want to just piggyback on what was said earlier. So we created an Office of Youth, and the reason I wanted to have that is because how do we measure all of these things? We've got youth in a lot of different components, and there's a lot of good work being done, but it's fragmented. And so we now have an Office of Youth to really try to look at, are we making an impact? What's working, what's not working? Because some things may work and then they may change. You need to try to do something else. So I would just ask our Mr. Patton, Director Patton, that falls up under him, because my goal is to look at the county holistically and be able to, in real time, have our Office of Youth, and then every year have a report out, the state of youth in Hamilton County. Here's areas that we need to target, here's how many jobs, here's what we did with advocacy, and then the different groups, but it's everybody under one Hamilton County. And so we hear about a lot of great work that's happening with youth, but to me it's so fragmented, and I want to be able to say, here's what we're doing, here's the challenges. This year our challenge is this, or this was high and now we were able to bring that down. So I think we were able to help like 30,000 youth But before, we didn't know how many youth. We vote on a lot of programs, we vote on a lot of funding, but everything is so fragmented. And I wanted to have one number, one app. That's my goal. And I would hope that Director Patton can work with you and others. I'd love to have the young people develop the app yourself. Develop the app, develop the text messaging, because y'all texting now. Don't send no email. Don't send no email. Y'all ain't checking no emails. But so that we can reach you where you are with an app, a cool app. So I would like to, for me, my takeaway is, how do we develop an app? We developed a portal to help with relief, 513relief.org. I would like to see a portal for everything for youth by youth. Yes. You could go there if you're feeling like you want to give up. You go right here, and we can connect you. If you need help to find out what type of, because I'm thinking other youth would probably want to advocate. Maybe they can't get up to the State House, but y'all up to the State House. But now you're letting them know, hey, be aware of these things. This affects us. So I don't know what the platform is, but it could be on all platforms that how you get your information. And so I would hope that that's something I'd like to have all the youth on, so that we can really get our arms around what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, and then where do we need to shift to help as many youth as possible. Everybody doesn't come in the world equally, unfortunately. Some people come in and they're born to poverty. Some people come in and they're not born to certain parents. We don't get to pick them. But once we get here, we got to deal with the cards that were dealt, and some people have to catch up because they didn't come in the world with everything equal. So thank y'all for what y'all are doing. It's very impressive, and look forward to hopefully Director Patton, Holly, and my colleagues. That's something that I'd like for us to have our youth be able to, maybe that could bring all the youth groups together to work on. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being here. Thanks to all four of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for having us here today.
Thanks for the work you do. All right, our next item is alternatives to a wet weather impervious surface charge. Diana Christie, the director of MSD, is here. Welcome, Diana.
Good morning, commissioners.
It's a hard act to follow.
It's a little bit of a transition. Maybe I'll just need to
It's
pause.
all important stuff today, but it's all very different. Yeah.
We do have a slide presentation if you want to. I'll wait till she pulls that up, but great. Okay. So thank you for having us here today. I'm Diana Christie, the director of MSD. I also have with me Neil Frink. He's one of our city attorneys that works at MSD, and we're going to split this up and talk through the alternatives that we're here to present. So just to cover, generally, we're going to give some background on the MSD rates and the wet weather impervious surface charge study that was conducted, really just to set the context and some of those challenges that we saw in that and why we're talking about alternatives. I'm going to talk about alternatives to the rate structure, and then Neil's going to talk about some programmatic alternatives that we've also identified to, in our mind, achieve most of the objectives that we've set out to achieve from the beginning. So to begin, it's important to understand that MSD's sewer rates and how those are set are really vital to the financial health of the district and our ability to operate and maintain the sewer system in Hamilton County. Over 90% of the funds, the revenue that we bring in, comes from our sewer service charge. And what that is the bill that you all receive, whether you're a residential customer or a commercial customer. You are paying your sewer bill. And that bill, I'm going to talk about how that is generated. But really, again, that serves the significant financial needs of the district, including all of our operating expenses, the personnel, the maintenance of the assets, and the ongoing capital improvements. So the existing rate structure consists of a monthly minimum charge and a volume-based charge for any use over 3 CCF. That's has to do with the volume of the flow. So regardless of how much water you use in a given month, you are paying a minimum charge. And that's important because, again, really speaking to maintaining the system, we have a lot of work to do regardless of how much flow actually comes in any given day or week or month. There's cost just to administratively manage the sewer district, to send bills out. And there's also costs associated with various dischargers that come to us and all of the stormwater that gets into our system from various ways. So we're going to talk more about that. But in that minimum charge, and really the entire design of the rate is intended to cover all of the costs that we need to cover to run the district. And it is designed to do so based on the customers that we're serving and the cost typically associated with those customers. We do also have we have affordability in mind already in the rate structure. Many of you may not know, but residential customers are not charged for high volume of water usage in the summer months. So you have an average over the winter billing period. And if you go above that in the summer, because typically you're watering your lawn or your garden that isn't coming to the sewer, we do not bill for that flow. So we use the average to set a cap, the average of the winter billing period. And that's for residential customers. We also have a customer assistance program. Won't go into the details, but that's a program for low-income seniors to qualify for a 25% discount. Our commercial industrial customers also have additional costs associated with some of their higher strength discharges. Those are captured in a surcharge, and this is through our industrial program where we inspect facilities and permit them. But some of those surcharge fees, those add an additional about 5% to our overall revenue that we bring in. So again, over 90% of it is that sewer service charge that everyone pays. And while we don't have currently a separate wet weather cost, our current structure does account for all of the flow that comes to us. So the industry term we use is I&I, which stands for inflow and infiltration, but really this just means any water that is getting into the sewer system, either through groundwater or cracks in the system, or the actual combined sewer connections where stormwater is coming in, not through your water meter. So we know how much volume, which is the inflow that comes to our plants, and we account for that when we set our rates, but that is not part of the metered amount of flow that comes. So we call that, again, our I&I. We're going to talk more about that. This is our rate structure. You can find this on our website. Won't go into great detail on this, but the most important thing is just to look at, again, just to illustrate. So the minimum charge is what everyone pays regardless of their water use, and it is based on your meter size, which generally translates to different customers. So most of our residential customers have a 5/8 inch meter, so they have a monthly minimum charge of about $41.50. So even if you're gone all month, you're going to get that bill if you didn't use any water. Then the commodity charge, again, this is will all be combined on your bill, but that is any volume that you use over the 3 CCF. And what you'll notice here on the commodity charge is that the first 4,700 cubic feet per month has one rate, and then once you go over 5,000 cubic feet, it drops. And so once you reach a really high volume of water, your rate actually, this is the current structure, your rate actually decreases, and we call that the declining block rate. And this is because under the current structure, we have recovered so much of our costs in that minimum charge in those early, the first block of volume, that those higher volume users don't have to pay more. That's just the design of the structure. So we're going to also talk about that, but I wanted to point that out. And then I've also included here the strength charges for our surcharge customers. So jumping to what we were doing with the wet weather impervious surface charge, this was one of several recommendations in a task force that the county had in 2016. we've already implemented many of those recommendations, specifically in 2017 through 2019. We transitioned from quarterly to monthly billing. We also decreased the the minimum base charge at that time, and we implemented the customer assistance program. So really this wet weather impervious surface charge did come out of that, but it was one of the last things to tackle because it was complicated. So that we began a feasibility study. The county and MSD worked together, and we used rate consultants to perform a very in-depth analysis and feasibility study of bifurcating our rate structure to continue to charge, as I just described, a sewer service charge, and to collect a separate charge. Essentially, we're bifurcating it to try to capture all of that wet weather flow instead of the way we were doing it previously. And that was based on an impervious area definition. So really recognizing that, really basing it off of the property's contribution of wet weather based on the runoff of the properties. So we spent a lot of time on that, and the recommendation included a integrated, like a uniform wet weather impervious surface charge. It would be different for commercial industrial than residential, but everyone in the district would pay this WISC even if they were outside of the combined sewer area. And that is because of just how complex it would be to try to do it based on the area and the actual impervious flow coming to the site. So that was the recommendation, and we worked very closely with a group of stakeholders that were selected by the commissioners. So after a lot of that work and a lot of those sessions with the stakeholders, ultimately we were unable to reach full consensus on a path forward. There were a lot of the stakeholders wanted to see something implemented, but they did not agree on the components that had been included in the feasibility study, and had a lot of questions and things that really wanted to further flesh out before we proceeded any further. MSD and the county administration has since recommended that there are other alternatives, and that's what we're talking about today. There's been a lot of those lately. So these alternatives are really what we're suggesting, as opposed to continuing down the path we were on, to stop and look at some different ways to achieve, again, some of these objectives. And without getting into spending too much time on the challenges of the WISC, it is important to just, let everyone know why we are suggesting these alternatives. Some of these are operational challenges with what was proposed. The collection of impervious surface data is not something that is done presently. We did a lot of work to do the feasibility study, but to do this in an ongoing manner to support billing customers this way, it is a very data-heavy and operational-heavy task that would have to be implemented, and there's cost to that. MSD works with 10 other municipalities to have our bills sent to our customers, the largest being Greater Cincinnati Waterworks, but there are 9 others, and so all of those entities would have to completely overhaul the billing system, and the cost of that, while we don't have specific cost estimates, just our general ballpark was millions of dollars, very, very expensive to update those billing systems, and the additional staffing that would be required to perform that. Then there's also just some challenges and risks that we felt as we continued to study the WISC, including the potential financial instability that would be created if we are potentially creating a large part of our billing structure that would also allow for entities to apply for credits. And that was one of the goals, and clearly the stakeholders all really liked the credits, but once you have such a large number of the individuals getting credits, it really just puts the entire rate structure into somewhat of a unstable state, because a lot of the larger users that we design the rate after contributing more could potentially apply for a credit and receive that, and then those charges would have to be passed on to other customers. So it becomes very challenging to determine the stability of a rate structure that way. And then we definitely felt that there were some communication challenges in our region because of the way stormwater is managed. And we have multiple entities that already do charge for stormwater management. Whether you're in the city of Cincinnati or outside, you're paying for some stormwater management to a entity other than MSD. So let me get into the objectives and then the alternatives on the rate equity side, on the rate structure side. So we know that there has always been a desire to keep our rates equitable, and could we be better than how they are set now? And that is there is some general sense that perhaps residential customers are having to pay more than their fair share. If there are commercial or industrial customers or property owners that are contributing more flow than residential customers, and they should be paying more. We want to reduce the wet weather impacts on MSD systems. So anything we can do to find ways to reduce wet weather that gets into our system without us having to do major capital upgrades could potentially save money in the long run. It's also good for the environment to keep that stormwater out of the sewer system. So that's really some of the objectives here with incentivizing reduction, disincentivizing excessive runoff from coming to our sewer, and then more public education and outreach really to help people understand that some of these problems can be solved by third parties other than MSD and our capital programs. So the alternatives, and again, I'm going to talk about the rate equity and the changes to the rate structure, and then Neil's going to talk about some programs. So I know I'm going a little fast, so if there's anything you want me to go into more detail. So there's really three components to the rate structure currently that we're talking about evaluating and changing. And the first one is the one that we really recommend today, and we feel very confident that we could make this change without really much additional resources or money, and that it's based on everything we've learned to date through the impervious surface charge work that we've done. And that is, again, looking at how we currently allocate that I&I, so all of that unbilled flow that we know gets into our system, but it is not part of the individual customer's meter, so it's not being measured by your meter, but we do allocate it based on a customer and volume component. So what that means is, again, when we set that base charge and then those declining volume rates, we are taking consideration how we recover the costs for all of the unbilled flow from each of those customers. And the current allocation has 75% of that unbilled flow being recovered in the customer component, meaning really regardless of how much volume you're contributing, we need to recover all that. And then 25% of it is recovered in the volume. We have looked at various industry standards and again, all of the data that we have collected in the impervious surface charge, and we recommend that we shift that allocation, and this is really all just the behind the scenes design and formula of the rate study, of the rate setting, and we recommend shifting that to 40-60 so that we're only recovering 40% of that in the customer component, and we recover 60 of it based on the volume that is coming to us. And I think the easiest way to understand this is what you would see is that declining block rate would go away. And so once you get past the minimum base charge, the charge for all volume we receive is the same. That is essentially on the outside all that a customer would see in terms of the change, but it has the impact of having a modest decrease in most residential customers' bills and a modest increase in our commercial and industrial users. And this is what we saw with the impervious surface charge ultimately as well, is that it would shift those costs slightly to the commercial industrial customers. With the impervious surface charge, we were seeing more shift to commercial industrial than we do here. But again, this is our recommendation that we do go ahead and proceed with this. It could be implemented this year when we come back to the board with our budget and our rates for 2026. So the second thing that is also within our existing rate structure that would be a relatively easy change. In other words, there's not a lot of cost associated with it or additional resources. We could do it this year with our annual rate legislation. Of course, there would be public hearings before we would do any of that. But there's a little bit more to understand here before we recommend this. And so we are doing some work now, and that is to evaluate reducing our minimum charge further. So right now, again, the minimum charge covers the first 3 CCF of water. So everyone pays that regardless of how much water they use. And there are many customers, there are customers, especially single people who live on their own. Some of our seniors we see use a lot less water. And so they aren't even using that minimum amount, but they are paying for it. So evaluating reducing that further, I did note here we did reduce that in 2018 from 5 CCF to 3 CCF after study. So reducing that further, perhaps to 2, it would allow some customers to who do not use that much water, they would see a reduction in their bill. But there is some potential financial risk because we have to make sure that we have sufficient revenue coming in regardless of the volume of water used on any given month. And these are the kind of things that our financial stability and the bond markets look at. So when we're doing a lot of our capital projects, we need to make sure that we aren't creating that rate instability. So again, a little bit more just to study there, but this is one of the key and relatively easy changes that could be made. And the last on the rate side is evaluating potentially transitioning from the structure. When I showed, let me just jump back to this slide, because it's easier to explain it here. So when you look at our the way our rate structure is set, even though we talk about and we design it based on customer class, residential customers, multifamily customers, commercial and industrial, they're actually converted just to meter sizes. So we do not have different rates based on your based on customer class. And this is just different ways to do it. There's lots of utilities that bill by customer class, lots that bill just by meter size. We still consider all of that in designing the rates, but it would be a different, it would be a way to really hone in on some of those differences between our customers and set the rates that way. Again, this recommendation, we aren't fully recommending this yet because we're doing additional study. It would be potentially implemented, I would say, more likely to be in 2027 that we would come to the board with a recommendation on that. But we are studying that right now. So those are the 3 changes that could be made without overhauling our rate structure, without increasing the costs on our administratively, and really without changing what our customers see, but it would shift costs somewhat from residential to commercial and industrial. And so I would like to, let me get back to where I was, turn it over to Neil, who's going to talk about some of the programmatic recommendations we have to address the incentives and disincentives. And then we'll take questions. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, well, the stuff that Diana was talking about is changes that we could make to the rate structure, right? And there was the idea that by changing rate structure, we could also influence behavior and see some changes in how impervious surface was either shrunk or managed differently within the district. We're taking a piece of it now and looking at how can we attack that part of the problem more directly in a more targeted fashion to get to be able to control the outcomes of that a little bit more directly. And so there's 2 of these that I think are characterized in this in this presentation as incentives and one as a disincentive, but really those are just flip sides of the same coin if you think about it. So I would say we could characterize them all as incentives if we want to be positive about it. So, and I'll just start by saying we're in a good position to look at some of these based on two things. One, the sewer district over the last 10 years has greatly increased its ability to know what's going on in the sewers through our monitoring and our modeling programs. We have a lot more data to know what's going on in specific areas. The second piece, and this comes out of the work on the impervious surface charge study, is we have a really good overlay now of where there's impervious surfaces throughout the sewer district. And that, we understand that impervious surfaces lead to runoff that may end up in our system. And I'll say may end up in our system because there's properties where it doesn't, and that's something that during the impervious surface charge buildup could not be evaluated in detail because it requires looking at specific properties. And there's some properties that while it ends up in our system, they've already undertaken significant mitigation measures through stormwater BMPs for some of the larger sites, so that they're already doing a lot of the work that we would want them to do, which is shaving off the peak flows that we see during rain events. But based on those two things, our monitoring and modeling and the information that we got from the impervious surface charge study, we're in a good place to spin up, and I think we're talking about doing it initially with some pilots, some efforts to directly attack the problem. So the first one is in the area, it's mostly in the combined sewer area, and it's focused on looking at areas that have high levels of SBUs, incidents, and that are upstream of CSOs. And it's a program to go look at supporting downspout disconnects and managing stormwater from, and in this case, the pilot, we're going to focus primarily on residential properties. And the idea is if we can go to people and help them figure out how to take stormwater out of their local system. So it may end up putting it back into the combined system off their street, but it may solve some SBU problems on their street, and there may be a means to actually keep it out of the combined sewer system, or at least to shave off again that peak flow that we see during wet weather events. So we've got an idea about a neighborhood that we would like to roll out this pilot in. We need to engage in the discussion with folks to make sure that there's acceptability. I don't think that's going to be an issue. And what we'll be doing in large part, I guess I'm on to the next slide already, is helping them understand the opportunities and the limitations. So, for example, within the city of Cincinnati, generally it's difficult to disconnect a downspout and manage it separately. You can do it, there's just a lot of, it's actually in the, it is in the, which code? In the plumbing code, right? It's in the plumbing code, building code, but it's specifically in the plumbing code. And there's some limitations, and they're for good reasons. One, you don't want to create public health issues by creating wet areas. Two, you don't want to create potential soil erosion issues. We have some significant hilly areas in the city of Cincinnati. And three, you don't want to create public safety issues with respect to water that might be put onto the street to be managed as stormwater. And I know people will say, well, that's where all the stormwater gets managed right now, but it becomes problematic if you're in an area that potentially creates like a traffic safety or a freezing problem. So we're going to take a pilot area and look very specifically at it and see what we could do and see what we get for results in terms of mitigating primarily SBU issues. So that's kind of the first piece. Oh, in terms of, so all three of these that I'll talk about, they have the advantage of being scalable, right? If we do a pilot and it works, we can scale it up. Initially, this doesn't require a lot of resources from MSD or a lot of cost, but we will learn a lot by doing it. And I guess the other piece in this is we may offer an incentive to have people participate. The idea that initially is getting kicked around is a one-time credit to their bill so that they would be inclined to participate. It's not really necessarily going to change how much water, in a lot of cases, we need to manage, but we recognize that we might need to give them a reason other than helping themselves and their neighbors out with potential SBUs, to be inclined to participate. So this second area is primarily, at least for the time being, focused in the sanitary area of our system. But it's in the sanitary area of our system that is within the combined sewer watershed. So there's places that have separated sanitary sewers, but a lot of times those flow go to storm sewers that may ultimately connect to our combined sewer. In addition, in some areas in the sanitary service area, there are problems with SBUs based on capacity in the sanitary system because of, in this case, it would be unauthorized I&I or illicit I&I that's there because of connections from downspouts or yard drains or driveway drains. So there are places in the separated sewer system where during wet weather, people are experiencing SBUs at a rate that we think is unacceptable. And of course, any SBU is unacceptable, but there's a threshold at which we're like, this is really unacceptable. And that would be when they're experiencing it at less than a 10-year return frequency storm. That is a storm that you'd expect to see once every 10 years or so and a 1-hour duration. So those are those really hard but relatively infrequent storms, but not the mega storms that ultimately we'll have a hard time doing anything about. So based on the modeling and monitoring, we've been able to identify throughout our system about 400 what we refer to as LRIFA areas, which may be a brand new term to you. In fact, it's new enough to us that it has a couple different explanations, right? One is, as I've got up here, low return frequency areas. So again, it's where the frequency of a storm of a 10-year event is causing problems. So at a low frequency, below 10 years, a 10-year and lower storm is causing problems with SBUs. The other term for it is low recurrence.
Low recurrence interval.
Yeah, low recurrence interval flood areas. So they're both LRIFAs. They both mean the same thing. The acronym is just slightly different. But again, they're areas, and we have them both in the combined area and the separated area. But for this particular pilot, we're focusing in the separated area, areas where there's something going on that's causing people a problem that they shouldn't be having. So our development services group, which is the group that works with developers and in some cases municipalities and townships, have identified areas that are upstream of LRIFAs as development constrained. And what we're now asking in those cases is, before we allow new flow or increased flow from an existing facility, we're going to require them to use the credit program that we have in our rules and regs to remove, and we'll work with them on this, to remove a 5-to-1 ratio of wet weather inflow to added new flow. And we're planning on doing this in a partnering manner, right? So we can get some of those credits by doing manhole rehabilitation, sewer linings, but there's also instances where the municipality or township can get some of that on the private side. And that's because, again, there's these illicit connections that shouldn't be there. It turns out that when folks want to do development and there's a constraint, the ability to do development is a big incentive for them to help on the private side to remove some of these illicit connections. So we've been talking with, for pilots, City of Sharonville and City of Springdale about entering into an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement, whereby we would say, if you have a development inside of your city that needs credits, we'll cover half of them through work that we can do in the sewer system. You cover the other half. And since they're more familiar with their local plumbing code, building code, that's better for them to be working on downspout disconnections probably than us. And their response to that's been great. They're like, absolutely, we want to do this, we want to partner. And part of it is because when those LRIFA areas are within their jurisdiction, they don't want to be responsible for a development that they're facilitating that's also going to cause increased SBUs in their area. So I'm going to say it's a very positive, both public-public collaboration and public-private, and it's both facilitating, development or redevelopment, and also improving the conditions in our sewer. So we're kind of optimistic that this will be a good model, particularly in the separated sewer area, because the solutions are easier in the separated sewer area to get stormwater out, and there's not supposed to be illicit connections coming in. So more detail to that, but I think we'll probably come back in relatively short order with a couple of IGAs that we think are workable, and give you some more information. But we're excited about that piece of the program. And again, it's for at least for the pilot part of it, it's a relatively easy lift for us, right? Because it's the stuff we normally do, and we are putting other people to work. In the areas where we're doing rehab or for our sewers or manholes, it's work that we're already doing out of a prioritized program for asset management. So we just need to tweak that to make sure that we're picking up these additional areas that we need to, but it's not a big extension of what we're already doing. So the next part is, again, I said at the beginning, this one's sort of identified as a disincentive. I think that's a little bit negative. I think this is an incentive as well. So a lot of people's interest in the WISC, right, was to capture those really large properties that were contributing a lot of stormwater and either not paying enough for it or in some cases not paying anything for it. And that was the case, I think, that people would identify of a parking lot that wasn't paying any sewer bill but was contributing a lot of flow. So this last piece is a proposal to go attack those specific properties. I shouldn't say attack. That doesn't sound friendly. To go provide assistance to those property owners to help them evaluate opportunities and where they need to, give them the choice of either paying additional rates based on the volume that they send us. Our authority is to charge for water that people send to us either directly or indirectly. Where people are sending us excess wet weather flow beyond a reasonable amount, we have the ability to charge them for that. And so we'd go and identify, starting with the largest ones first, and kind of work into it from the top to the bottom. And I'll just give you a little bit of a picture of what that looks like. So again, based on the work that was done in the impervious surface charge study, we have a good idea about exactly where and who owns the largest chunks of impervious surface. We did a cut on it, and we limited it to, for this particular program, to flow that was coming into our combined sewer shed. So that could include separated areas that connect to our combined sewer shed. It doesn't include separated areas that don't flow to our combined sewer shed. So in areas that flow to our combined sewer shed, properties that have more than 2 acres of impervious surface, there's about 500 of them, and they account for, those 500 properties account for the same amount of impervious surface as 47,000 residential properties. So you can see it's that classic sort of 80-20 issue, like the smallest, and in this case, it's the smallest 0.5% of the properties account for about 20% of the impervious surface in the program. So again, that's why we're like, let's attack the easiest part of the problem first by focusing it. And we'll kind of walk down the 500 from, and we don't know exactly what the numbers are, but we would do a first tranche and then a second tranche. And then we wouldn't necessarily stop at 2 acres. We could go further, but let's do the thing that we can do first. So the interesting thing is, when we did the impervious surface charge, we know how much impervious surface people have, but what we don't know, and this was kind of a critical weakness in that program, is we don't know on a property by property basis whether it's coming to MSD or not. And in lots of cases, it's not. I can't tell you exactly how many cases it's not, but I'll just tell you in lots of cases it's not. So, for example, the top 12 properties that are on our list of 500, 9 of them are shopping centers. 2 of them are rail-related assets. One's a rail yard, the other one is an intermodal yard for taking stuff off of the trains. And the 12th one, which is actually the third, I think, largest on the list, is Paul Brown Stadium. So what's interesting is Paul Brown Stadium, when it was redeveloped, largely had the stormwater separated, right? So the county, under the WISC that we were looking at, where we hadn't evaluated specific contributions, we might have been charging Paul Brown Stadium. County would have said, hey, wait a second, we separated that. We would have had to, through an appeal process, back that out. And that's the same thing that would have been going on in a lot of places, just some of them people would have been shouting more loudly about. For the 9 shopping centers, one of them that was redeveloped, Oakley Station, during that project completely separated their stormwater. Working with the MSD engineer who was doing the permitting for it, they just collaborated, and there was an option for them to take the stormwater and avoid and get it to a place where it was ending up into a storm system that wasn't connected. So that was great. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to charge them an impervious surface fee if they had already completely mitigated. And there's a couple of examples in that top 12 where they've partially mitigated. There's a bunch where they've done no mitigation. And a lot of those properties are upstream of either CSOs or SBU areas or both. So the way the process would work is we would take this list, we'd start at the top, we would do an analysis to figure out how much of their flow impervious surface is coming to us. There's some details in like exactly how we do that. It's not that complicated, but it's just not worth going into right now. And then I think we would take it in chunks and say, and based on the analysis and based on our authority to charge for water coming to us directly or indirectly, this is what a bill would look like if we started charging you. We likely would ramp that in over time, and we would tell them, here's some things that you can do to mitigate. So some of these largest properties also have the best ability to mitigate because they've got a lot of space, right? They have the room to actually do something, whether it's detention or in the context of a development or redevelopment of part of their property, to do something to mitigate. And again, where it's a big plus for MSD, there's the possibility of public-private partnership. We're like, oh, if you would do this, that would help us out a lot. We can tailor something that's going to work for everyone's needs. So that is, yeah, so that's kind of the take on that third area. And between those three, we hope to sort of roll out these pilots and be able to pick up some opportunities to really be effective in the relatively short term, and then to be able to say, based on their effectiveness, we can do more of this, or we learned something from doing this, we can do more, but we're going to do it differently, or, ooh, that was kind of a bust, we're not going to do that. But I think we haven't picked these because we think they'd be a bust. We've picked these because we think that they'll be effective. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You kind of covered this. So you definitely wanted to open it up for questions, but just wanted to get to this slide just to reiterate that, with most of these things, especially the rate changes that we've talked about, that would be presented to the board. We would have, hearings on any rate structure changes. And these pilot programs, to the extent we're doing, any agreements, those would come back. We'd work with the county administration and come back at the appropriate time. So we are looking for feedback and questions. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Right off the bat, I appreciate that you are responding to the concerns that you've heard from, not only from this board, from also, though, the rate affordability task force and the group that got together related to impervious surfaces. This is clearly a response to that, and I'm grateful for that because I know it was complicated. We talked to many of the stakeholders that were at the table, and there was some frustration about not getting to a consensus and not having then anything move forward. So this is a response to that, and I'm grateful for it. It leads me to my first, I'm going to say it first so I don't forget. I will be interested to know what those stakeholders think about the recommendations that you're offering here. They spent a lot of time, years in many cases, looking at this and trying to figure out a different way to charge folks and make it more equitable, as you say. And so I'd be very interested to know, I'm sure you haven't done that yet, but to understand what the stakeholders' response to these alternatives would be. And as far as my response to some of this, the base charge issue going down is something that we've been asked to look at over and over again. So I think it's valuable to have that information. If a base charge were to go down and you wanted to remain revenue neutral, does that mean that people that are using more or more volume, that their rates would go up? Is that the math equation that you're doing?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
But
in addition to this other piece, because you've talked about, I'm intrigued by this other piece. I was reading this before the meeting. So you are calculating how we get our revenue differently, going from something that's very residential heavy to something that is less residential heavy and relies more on the more industrial and commercial users. Am I reading that right?
Yes, generally. The real shift is it is very customer heavy. So the way we say we know that we have this unbilled flow. So that I&I, we know we have it. We know how much we get because we measure the inflow at the plant. Then we know how much we measure for each of our users. And so we have this very large delta. And we have to recover the costs from everybody. Right now, it is very customer class driven. So so the way the rates are designed is we need to get some from our commercial, we need to get some from industrial, and some from residential. But it is more focused on that than it is on the volume of flow that's coming that is measured by the meters. So that's that 75-25 current split versus not a complete reversal, but a 40-60 is what is being recommended. So it really is based on what we know about the users, which the customer classes. It should be more on the commercial industrial. And that volume of flow that's coming in is where, we are also in those higher volumes, we are also getting more inflow with that. So it's a shift really in the design of it altogether. So it's not just the shift from residential to commercial, it's also that shift from, that shouldn't really be recovered as the base that everybody pays.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the result of that is that folks, you mentioned them, the single senior living in their homes, paying this base rate, and they are using far less than others, and yet they're still paying this significant base rate. And you've always explained that as we need to pay for the infrastructure, and so we need some kind of base rate to provide stability to the revenues. I understand that, but I think this is a good move to further recognizing that maybe that stability shouldn't be so much on the back of the senior living by themselves in their home, not using so much volume, but rather those that are using volume. And maybe it incentivizes people to use less volume, right? If we start to charge differently. And so I think that's an added bonus if people truly understand, how this is going to work. So I am in favor of the shifting that you're suggesting here, because I think it responds to really the residential piece and what we most hear from our constituents about the base rate and how some people feel like that is not a fair way to provide this revenue to the utility.
Can I add one comment on that?
Can I finish? Let me finish. Do you mind if I finish? Because I don't want to lose my train of thought here. So the other, then I'm moving on to number 2. Which talks about the downspout disconnection and doing a pilot. I think this is a great idea. Tell us, to me, downspout disconnection, it's like, well, how big of a difference would that make? What do you, you must think it's going to make a big difference or you wouldn't be doing it.
So it's complicated. So the first one we were talking about is downspout disconnection in the combined sewer area, and that is primarily to look at some of those hotspots is another way we talk about it, where our traditional approach to resolving those SBUs is the property by property backup prevention solutions, and just taking a different approach to say, is there a very isolated problem here that the downspouts could address. What it would not address, that kind of a pilot in the combined sewer area, we do not expect that to really reduce our our combined sewer overflows and our overall needs to increase capacity of the sewer system. But we see a lot of those are really just isolated in a neighborhood. And so and obviously we're incurring a lot of costs and people are suffering from SBUs. So it's really more
targeted.
Designed.
Got it.
Yes, for that.
And related to SBUs, which is something.
Yes, and that's in the combined area. And then in the outside the combined area, the second one is where we need to focus on those areas where development would be restricted, because again, if it's a limitation, we're seeing SBUs in the separated area, then it's really not possible to continue to develop and add flow without creating more SBUs. So we see that as something that we can really focus on, that third party to contribute to those costs.
I was wondering about how big of an impact it would be, and as you've explained that it's more of a pilot, it's more targeted than that. It's not really, you're talking about the whole system. Okay, and then the third one, so this to me makes sense that you're charging for those that are actually putting volume into the system, as opposed to assuming that everybody with a large impervious surface is putting into the system, and it's a combined system. So I heard you loud and clear there, and so I think this is also, all of these seem to be much more targeted than these kind of broad approaches that in theory sound great, but maybe aren't making the difference that we really want to make, and really not going after those that should be paying more because they're putting so much volume into the system. We just haven't captured that in the past. So I think this is a great idea to actually do that analysis, figure out who is impacting the system, and then having them pay their fair share, because that's what this is. These folks need to pay their fair share, and doing it in a way that's, pretty large properties, so people probably with some ability to respond to this. I do worry a little bit about how that would play out by way of these property owners and the incentive that we would provide to say, okay, so this might result in an increased charge, but if you help remediate some of the water going in, plant some trees, do a retention basin, then you can eliminate some of the costs and help solve the problem with us. So this public-private partnership, I think, is really important here too. But I do want to throw a little bit of caution on this to say I'm particularly sensitive to small business owners who will maybe be surprised that they have been putting into the system, not paying anything, and you bring that to their attention and they're like, well, wait a minute, this is new to me. I didn't know that. I didn't mean to not be paying my fair share, and not overburden them with some kind of costs that that would really they'd struggle with. So I just want to be really careful about how we inform people about this, be willing to be flexible by way of volume or by way of surface area, because we don't want to put people out of business. We don't want small business owners to say, you know, MSD has come in and now I can no longer afford to run my business. So I want to just be really sensitive to that piece, while also trying to capture this idea that some folks haven't paid anything in the past and they probably should have. So I just want to throw a big old caution on that one, just from the practical lens. So those are my questions. And again, my top line item is making sure the stakeholders have some opportunity to evaluate this. They've done a lot of work here, and make sure that there's not something that is kind of out here and we're not thinking about it. So I'll appreciate you bringing that back to us.
Great.
Commissioner Summer Adumas.
I think he wanted to add something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want to clarify?
Yeah, thank you.
Just, I can do it really quickly. The one really nice thing about going from the 25-75 to 40-60 is it's consistent with industry standards. So we're just moving in a direction that probably reflects where we're at and reflects what everyone else is doing. Like, it makes a lot of sense to me. The second one on amount that's coming down for downspout disconnections. So the average surface area on a roof in a residential property would generate about 8 55-gallon drums of water with a 1-inch rainfall in an hour. So if you take a street where everyone's gutters are connected and you've got 20 or 30 properties that have downspouts disconnected in an area that's getting a local thunderburst, that's putting a lot of water into their system all at once, which I think what we've seen is that's, in a lot of cases, the main contributing factor to the SBUs. So that'll be helpful. And I don't have anything on the third point.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Commissioner Summer Adumas.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And you just said, I'm writing it down, main contributing factor, because that's going to be one of my points. Okay, just a general question. The meter size is determined by the square footage of the home. Is that how that's decided? I see you have meter size on here. How's it?
The water meter that is installed in a property is, it's not necessarily on the square footage of the home, but to be honest, I don't know the answer.
It's dictated by number of fixtures and how much
Yes.
the water demand is. So there's code that'll tell you this size house with this many fixtures.
Okay, so the size house.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, most of our even larger homes, most residential are that smallest size.
I'll try to run through this because I have a
Okay.
few comments. Extra strength charges. What is the extra strength charges on here? What does that stand for? What's the purpose of that? You want to?
Come up to the mic.
Well, on the surcharge. So I think. So we currently have a program for our industrial customers who contribute certain higher strength volume of it's things that we are treating in the treatment plant, but if they're contributing more, we bill for that extra strength. So it's the biological oxygen demand and total nitrogen, and what is the third one? Total suspended solids. So our industrial group monitors that, and certain customers are paying a surcharge for that extra strength because there's a cost to it in addition to just our general treatment.
Okay, thank you. And then I was going to sort of mention what Commissioner Driehaus had mentioned as it relates to evaluating alternatives. And I noticed it had county and MSD is evaluating, but nothing to indicate that stakeholders are going to be involved in the alternatives that you guys have come up with. I was wondering why you didn't add that on, stakeholders in addition.
We have, since sharing the memo that we provided previously, reached out to the stakeholders. I think we had mentioned that following this stakeholder effort, there was no consensus, and that we were MSD and the county administration were recommending these alternatives, but they have not really, had this information for a long time. So we are interested in getting their feedback, but we don't have all of the stakeholders' responses yet.
And how do you plan on doing that?
I'm going to talk with Assistant Administrator Chrisman because the information has been provided, but it has been difficult to bring the group back together. And I think it might be best to just, have some one-on-one outreach with the stakeholders versus trying to schedule a larger meeting so that we can get that feedback.
Because it was a fairly large group.
It's a fairly large group, and it just proves difficult to schedule those.
And then you mentioned earlier reducing the CCF, evaluating whether or not it's financially viable for seniors. So I think that's a good idea to try to do. I have 4, 5, okay. Oh, so your pilot program is going to be dealing with SBUs. I'm really a little surprised because I always have an issue with SBUs, you know that. But the number of SBUs doesn't correlate to, I guess, the level of approval. You guys don't know the percentage that you approve as appropriately being SBU is very low. And I always had a concern about that. So for the pilot program, I'm just wondering, why did we choose SBUs, residential, versus going after the big boys, like the companies and parking lots and all? I know it's probably easier to focus in on SBUs for residential, but why would you think of SBUs instead of, say, overland flooding, to look at that and look at companies that are, and you said it, maintain the, what did you say? I wrote, I can't read it. At the end, you were talking about how companies are the ones who have the overland flooding that goes down into the homes and causes the problems. So I know it's probably easier to pilot and focus on SBUs, residential. Why don't we go after the big boys, the companies that are the parking lots? It may be a harder reach or harder time to do it, but if we're really trying to get at the crust of whether or not we need impervious surface fee, that's where we need to go. I know they're at the top of the chain, but
I think that's sort of what we're trying to hit in that third type of program, is going and looking at the largest contributors.
Yeah, why can't we do that first?
Well, we would be doing them all.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is there's 3 different pilots that were suggested. But the third one is is this top level, the highest, the largest impervious area properties, and we would do that at the same time.
One pilot, so now there's going to be 3 pilots, and the first pilot is the SBU.
It is looking at areas where there are SBUs and seeing if there is by going to various properties and helping them, and really it would be, we would provide incentives to help property owners identify solutions by removing their downspouts. Yes.
So I think it was a lack of clarity in the way that we presented. So these aren't ordered in time. They're just 3 different types, and we would plan to run them all out in parallel.
Oh, that's.
Yep. So we're not waiting to attack the big boys.
Okay. We're not attacking anybody, remember?
We're not waiting to deliver valuable help and services to the larger impervious area properties. We're going to do all of those things at once.
Simultaneously.
And that's the value of doing it with the pilots, is then we can get them all started at once and then figure out. My belief is that we will be able to scale up all of these, but we'll learn something by getting them started and actually doing something on the problem.
But if you have a strategic plan, you're gonna, even though you may say simultaneously, you're gonna start on one. You have a team that's working on SBUs and another team that would be working on overland flooding. What's the third pilot?
Do you want to explain them?
Yeah, so we've got the sort of targeted downspout connection in the combined sewer area. That's going to be a very focused sort of demonstration pilot. We've got the work that we're doing and this work is already going on, so we're not really adding something new. We're just formalizing it and making sure we have more buy-in on looking at development constrained areas, and those are mostly in the sanitary sewer areas that are tributary to the combined sewer area. And then the third one is going and looking at the largest impervious area contributors, and starting from the top and just walking down the list and seeing what people need to either do differently or pay differently to account for their impervious area.
Okay. So I'm looking at next steps. I appreciate that. And it says we will probably need to pass some legislation to authorize pilot programs for the fourth quarter and quarter one of 2026. So when we have this legislation, it's going to be for all three pilot programs, correct?
So we're still evaluating whether what pieces of this would need board approval. We're definitely going to continue to inform the board and work with the county administration. But for example, the second pilot where there is that effort with other municipalities where we would potentially have an intergovernmental agreement, that would certainly need board approval. So the legislation to authorize for them will be based on what is needed to have legislation. But we are proceeding, and we really are looking for feedback, but we would like to proceed with all of these. I just don't know that all three would need legislation approved, but.
All right. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Reese?
Yes. So just had a couple things. I'm not convinced yet on this. I think there's some of the concerns that were already expressed. Small businesses, I'm not necessarily convinced that this is going to be a big discount for homeowners. Like I said, every time we do these kinds of things, I equate that to pumping your own gas. We used to pump our own gas and pay 99 cents a gallon, and they would wash the windows and they would come out and check your air and your tires, and they told us, hey, if we just pump your own gas, that will cut the cost. We always start off with a pilot. Now the gas prices have jumped through the roof, and nobody is cleaning the windows, nobody's checking your tires, and you're pumping the gas in the wintertime. They told us if we go to the grocery store and we do our own checking out, we'd be able to get a discount on the groceries. Folks are in there checking out, getting rid of jobs, and the price of eggs done jumped through the roof, paying higher for eggs than we ever paid in our lifetime. Grandma had people bagging her groceries, taking them out to the car. So when we make these institutional changes, they always come in with a nice thing called pilot. But then 10 and 20 years from now, people forget about the pilot and the promises, and next thing we know, people are complaining that the rates have gone out the door. With that being said, there is a big concern for small businesses, nonprofits, and churches who have property and some of them barely hanging on to the property. And I'm just concerned that those prices, you price a church, they all of a sudden won't be able to preach on Sunday or Monday, won't have Bible study on Wednesday, and people don't have enough money to sustain it. And there's other nonprofits, not just churches. Small businesses, we're getting ready to get all kind of cuts. We don't know what's getting ready to happen for Washington. That big so-called beautiful bill won't be so beautiful once it's implemented for a lot of people locally. So I'm just not convinced that this will cut the cost. I think it would, a few here, a few there, because it gets real technical, and you guys are more technical than me. I don't measure the water and all that stuff, but you guys measure it, and it always comes out where the homeowner and the taxpayer, you come out to your house to fix something, they say, oh, MSD came out, oh, it was just 2 inches, and it would have been MSD's responsibility, but now it's your responsibility. It's always 2 inches. You almost made it. These programs, we can't really help. We'll do a little bit. And so I'm just not convinced yet, maybe I'll get convinced later, that this will actually cut the cost. Also, on your proposal, and let me say thank you for looking into it, because this is a tough thing to look into. This is not an easy thing, and you guys have tried to do a thorough job to present the best you can, so it's nothing against you all. It's just I got to make sure that the homeowner, what we're selling, they gonna really feel it. In here, it talks about the timetable rate equity efforts, and we're talking about November, December. Well, every November, going into December, we do a budget. And every year thus far, the last couple of years, there's always a rate increase, which I don't support, but there's a rate increase. And so now people won't feel it because there'll be a rate increase. So they won't feel the discount based on the timing of this. So those are some of the things. I know it's hard to get everybody. No one shows up until they get the bill because they ain't got time. They don't come. I mean, this place is not packed with people. But when they get the bill, everywhere I go, people are complaining. The largest part of your water bill is the sewer. And every year we say, oh, it just be $5 more. I got my bill. I said, what happened to $5 more? They went up to $200 more. And so I just want to be very, very cautious to make sure that we're not changing an institutional thing with a temporary pilot. So I just got to do a little more thinking on it. But those are the things that I don't want to vote on something. And just like last year, my neighbor come out and said, what you trying to do? I worked my whole life. You trying to make me get thrown out? I can't run no water. I got another person, water got turned off. She got laid off and she's in the house with nothing on because she just can't afford it. So there's a lot more I have to consider before moving forward. I can't look at this in isolation. But I do appreciate you looking at it. It's a tough issue, and I got to think a little bit more about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So talk to us a little bit about the next steps then. You're going to go down, you're going to go back, you're going to get feedback from stakeholders. What are you thinking by way of time frame?
So if we look at the potential rate changes, that would be something that we would like to have before the board when we talk about the budgets and rates typically in November. We can have more information before then. It'd be great to have feedback from the stakeholders. So again, we're still waiting for some additional analysis on the reduction on the minimum base charge, but the goal would be both the shift on the I&I and the reduction on the minimum base charge would be proposed to be considered by the board this fall. So that is definitely on track, and that work has mostly been done. And then the pilots, we have various groups at MSD that manage things. They'll work with the large impervious area properties. We have, that would be coordinated with our industrial group that already does, go out to properties and investigate them. So those pilots really were, kind of pulling all that together and identifying what we would need to bring to the board for approval. Also, I think, again, yet this year. So we plan to proceed, and we are proceeding on our end and putting everything together.
Do you have another question?
Yeah, I had a.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know this impervious surface fee we've been talking about for about 8 years, 8 years that I know of. And so I think as a board, we need to decide, is this something we want to still beat to death? I mean, is this something we want to do? I mean, we need to make a decision, because at some point we need to put this to bed. I mean, 8 years is a long time, and now we're thinking about going out to pilot programs and deciding on that as far as where we want to be with this impervious surface. Is this something we want to continue to tackle? It'll be, I don't know, 10 years. I don't know. I see Karen is here. It might be even longer than that. But so I think just as a board, because we're starting another cycle of something different, and that's going to take a while. So, I don't know if we need to look at that and make a decision, because at first I thought it would mean that the residents would pay so much less, and it's not necessarily that. You talked about how the system to get that started would be about a couple years if you made some changes in the system as far as fees for everyone. So I'm just sitting here thinking, how long is this going to go on? And is this something we really want to tackle? So that's just an editorial.
Well, if I could, so because I think that is important, and we would like, to hear the board's feedback, but to clarify, the effort that had been recommended by the Affordability Task Force to look at this impervious surface charge, then we started working on it really in 2021, is when and that proposal is the proposal that creates those challenges, those operational, those cost, those implementation challenges that not only do those challenges and costs exist, it needs a lot more work. And that's, I would say years and money. And what we are saying today is, rather than continue down that path, these are alternatives that we can do now with very little, to just kind of our current operating status. There are changes we can do to the rates now. It's not the proposal that had been evaluated and looked at for those several years. It is an alternative, and it does not have that timeline, and it doesn't have that, those additional costs and challenges. And our recommendation is that we proceed with these. It doesn't mean we couldn't someday come back and evaluate a larger impervious surface charge again, or there would be something different. But we really are suggesting that we don't continue to really study and dig in on that, because it would take quite a bit more time and money.
Because when I came in 19, I remember hearing about this and about the group and
Yes.
all of that. So, okay. So that's all I was
Well,
saying.
and my take on it is that we're trying to get something done here because we didn't get a conclusion from the impervious surface fee group. The Affordability Task Force has been in place before I got here, so that's even longer.
Yeah.
That's even longer than the 8 years. But so this is addressing the concerns of the Affordability Task Force, just not addressing the concerns related to the impervious surface fee. So they're trying to get to the same thing, but they're two different things. And so the reason I think this is a positive step forward is because we're getting action here that potentially does reduce rates for particularly the residential customer that's not using a lot of the service, and gets to that without having to have the input related to the impervious surface. That's part of it, but it's not all of it. And so that's why I feel like, and I want to applaud MSD and our team. I mean, I know Holly was involved in a lot of this, so was Karen, in trying to come up with something that addresses this, the unfairness in the base rate without waiting till we get a final conclusion on the impervious surface. So
So what's the time frame when you start the pilot programs? When do you plan on completing them?
Well, I mean, one
A year,
pilot
year
is
and a half?
they're pretty focused approaches, so it would be, I don't know the completion timeline. I don't know that we have that, but we would like to be underway with that in the next 6 months.
Sitting so cool, like an answer.
So the first category, because it's kind of focused, we can get that started relatively quickly.
And
That's the downspout disconnection in the combined sewer area. That's probably 4 to 6 months to get it off the ground. And there's some public relations that needs to go on with that, because this is voluntary. It's not something that we can mandate. The second area where we were looking at the LaRIFA areas and the 5-to-1 reduction of old flow, INI versus new flow, we're ready to start that right now.
And
for those two, for Springdale and Sharonville, we've been talking with them. We have kind of a draft. They're excited about it. We can get that started maybe before the end of the summer.
so I'm not, starting is fine. So how long do you think it will take for those two areas to complete, approximately?
Well, they are running their very first developments through right now. So they had a development they wanted to do. We're doing this, we're planning to partner with them on the credits, and they will be able to move forward with their development and improve the conditions in our system in the next couple months.
I said the end date. How long do you think to complete those two areas you were talking? You don't have a crystal ball.
No, but it's dictated by new development or increase, so it's always reactive to new inflow coming into the system. So it's very much, it doesn't have an end date. We will continue to do it for probably ever. Will be the foreseeable future until while we still have problems with capacity in our system. So we will continue to do it to remove I-9 that doesn't need to be there.
And that's part of the problem. All this new development is making all this overland flooding into homes, and there's so much new development. So anyway, I won't go over it again, but I was just thinking you need to look at that first versus.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's okay.
It'll take a few years to step through it. But
Oh boy, there we go to a few years.
it's a fairly big undertaking. So
You're talking about the impervious surface.
the mega impervious.
That's what I'm saying. I know I'm not crazy. That we're going to be up here. Anyway, okay.
Well,
I won't be up here.
Understood. And you're looking for direction, and so we've all weighed in. So we'll look forward to having you back and getting us some information about what everybody, some more evaluations. So
Okay.
it's a process.
He could
It's a
talk about
process.
it all
We all know
night,
it's
I could tell.
MSD is always a process.
It's exciting stuff.
It's a big. Well, it's exciting.
I know it's
gotta say,
exciting
it is exciting. So
Yeah.
it's such a big deal.
It is a big
that we
deal.
need to take our. But we have taken a long time on the impervious surface. We all agree to that. All right. Well, thank you all
you
for
very
being here.
much.
Appreciate it. Okay, we've got another presentation. So let's get to it, ladies. The Community Impact Program update. Bruce Carter and Catherine Fitzgerald are here from Alloy. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to our meeting.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Catherine Fitzgerald with Alloy Development. We're very excited to present on this. It is a bit of a pilot program, but we are technically approaching a year. I thought to myself, I'm not going to use that word.
Hesitating to use that word.
But really, the purpose of the program is to promote economic development in communities that in need of additional capacity and support them really through project management. What the county found was even when these communities are provided with grants, they have difficulty implementing the grants just from a capacity issue. So we began with 3 communities in September of 2024, Mount Healthy, Lockland, and Cheviot. 9 communities are eligible for the program. Bruce Carter, who's going to go into each of the projects that he's working on as a project manager for us, he'll get into detail. But I would like to say also that we've had a lot of positive feedback from the communities that we've assisted.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The first of the 3 communities that we're working in for CIP is Cheviot. So Cheviot applied for assistance through the program based on a challenge they have with a 14,000 square foot vacant building, which was a former Woolworths department store, then a furniture store, and most recently Kappel's Costumes and Party Supplies. The building's been vacant since 2019. The city acquired the property in 2021 with county grant assistance through the CRG program. Basically, between the time that Cheviot applied for our assistance and then once they were selected and we began work there, they had lost a partnership with the tentative developer who had planned to put a microbrewery in the site. So the county awarded a 2024 CDAP grant of $320,000 for stabilization and capital improvements of the building based on that proposal. So at the time we entered, the project was left without a viable path forward. The process that we recommended to Cheviot was that we issue a competitive request for proposals to kind of cast a broader net and see what other development interests we could get in the site. Concurrently, we recommended that they join the CIC of Greater Cincinnati, which would give them more control over the outcome, effectively letting them choose their preferred development and not just selecting the highest bidder for the property. We began a campaign of outreach to the local brewing community, which I would kind of call a sort of economic development pub crawl, which involved me sort of cold calling on microbreweries around the county. These conversations sort of led us.
If you need help with that in the future, let us know.
Yes, ma'am. So these conversations were really useful. We both were sort of referred to other brewers that might be interested in opening in the space, but also kind of learned a little bit about the industry. And one thing we heard was, after the gold rush we saw in this sort of microbrewery development in the last decade, there is a sort of consolidation in the industry going on now. I think we've all seen news about a number of local tap rooms closing over the last year or so. So we received some submissions for to the RFP. We reviewed those with the City Council, and after hearing two proposals from finalists we selected, a winning proposal was selected at an executive session of the City Council on April 1st. I'll get to the proposal in a moment, but just we'll follow up that work by continuing to assist with grant administration of that CDAP grant. So we will work with the city to help them through the procurement process to get the capital improvement work that's being funded through the grant done, and then shepherd the property transfer through the CIC to the developer, and then continue providing project management and technical assistance throughout the duration of the project. So the vision. The winning proposal is called Central Station. It's a family-friendly entertainment destination focused on a pickleball complex with live music, a sports bar, and permanent food truck parking. The proposal comes from a team of Dr. Andy Lemley and Greg Shainling. Dr. Lemley is a chiropractor with a long-standing practice in Cheviot. He also happens to be the team chiropractor for the Bengals, so he's hoping to leverage his relationship with the organization into some programming for the venue. His partner, Greg Shainling, and his family own Crossroads and Tavern on the Bend, which are some well-known West Side hospitality establishments. The selection of these two guys really fits a grow-your-own type philosophy. These are two local entrepreneurs with deep roots in the West Side and a deep understanding of the market there. So we really think that they have the opportunity to really to serve the community well. They're bringing $1.5 million estimated in private investment, and an estimated 30 to 40 jobs. And just sort of a quick look at the proposed plan. You can see the pickleball complex at the rear of the site along with the food truck parking. This area is actually proposed to include a coffee counter, so this will sort of activate the space from the morning into the evening with the live music venue closer to Harrison Avenue at the front. Our second community is Mount Healthy. So the challenge they came to us with is 5 city-owned commercial and mixed-use buildings in need of redevelopment assistance. The city also has site control of 8 sort of scattered site former residential properties that are now vacant that they're hoping to see developed for affordable home ownership, along with a desire for some streetscape improvements. So our process in Mount Healthy, in looking at those 5 city-owned buildings, it was pretty evident to us based on just their architectural integrity that they might be eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. So this designation does 2 things. I mean, it's a matter of civic pride, acknowledging the history of the community, but also makes eligible development incentives in the form of the state and federal historic rehabilitation tax credits. So in addition to getting that district established, we'll be working to provide pre-development assistance for those buildings to help attract developer partners and get some redevelopment of those critical buildings in the business district going. Concurrent with our involvement, the city commissioned a study by Yard & Company, a local planning firm, to perform a small area plan, which is basically a master plan for revitalization of their business district. The results of that plan kind of indicated that they should focus on the intersection of Hamilton and Kenny Avenues, which happens to be the location of the bulk of those 5 buildings that the city owns that we were taking a look at. They also suggested an effort to create something they're calling the Hive, which would be an inviting public gathering space for pop-up events focused on Kenny Avenue and an adjacent city-owned parking lot. This would involve some creative placemaking efforts to kind of make that an attractive area to hold festivals and events. Finally, we're intending to facilitate a partnership with the port, bringing another county resource to bear to help the city with development of those scattered site locations for home ownership. Basically what they found was that when you look at the cost to develop a new home ownership unit, the market rate for that house basically ends up necessarily being higher than what you're looking for if you're trying to support a workforce population at 80 to 100% of the area median income. So this type of development is going to require subsidies, so partnership with the port can bring their expertise to the table. So the vision in Mount Healthy. Again, prioritizing redevelopment at the intersection of Hamilton and Kenny Avenues. Here you see a nice rendering by Yard & Company kind of indicating the vision for what they're calling the hub. So we will support grant funding requests to to push forward those creative placemaking initiatives, thinking of things like murals, painting along the streets for street calming, public art, this sort of thing, and continue to facilitate that partnership with the port for infill development at the scattered site homeownership properties. And the third community we're working in is Lockland. Lockland asked us to address a challenge they're having in redevelopment with something called the Lock site. So this is a 12-acre former manufacturing campus. This was the Stearns and Foster mattress company's campus, vacated in the early 2000s. The village is seeking redevelopment of the site, focused on finding an advanced manufacturing user, which would bring some good payroll to the village. In addition to the Lock site, they asked us to look at the neighboring Mill and Dunn Historic Business District. There's a great amount of potential for redevelopment in this area, but it's currently suffering disinvestment and a high degree of vacancy. So the main challenge that faces the Lock site is the imminent reunification of north and southbound lanes of Interstate 75. The site is bounded by basically what's known as the Lockland Split in the interstate. So the plan is for the northbound lanes at the east side of the site to join the southbound lanes at the west side of the site. That's going to involve some takings. And basically, it's causing a lot of uncertainty for developers who might be interested in the site because they don't know how that's going to affect their development plans. So our process in Lockland was to meet with stakeholders and developers to try to understand some of the challenges to development that they've found on the Lock site and in the business district, and look at some opportunities to spur interest in development there. We recommended a series of short-term projects which could be used to generate some positive momentum on the site. One of which I'll mention is a potential relocation of a historic bandstand located in Veterans Memorial Park, which is immediately adjacent to the interstate and will basically be dug up for the widening. We suggested that they relocate this to the southern portion of the Lock site, which would, one, give that historic asset a permanent home, but also provide sort of green space buffer between the historic business district and any future development on the Lock site. In the conversations we had with developers, one thing that we kept hearing again and again was, there's so much potential in this business district. If you can get something going there, we can generate more interest in the Lock site. I think one person said to us, that redevelopment in the business district and development on the Lock site are not an either-or situation, but a both-and situation. So we recommended a strategy of acquiring and redeveloping a key building in the business district to sort of catalyze further investment in the business district and increase visibility on the Lock site. So the plan was to pursue grants for the acquisition, pre-development activities, and capital improvements, and ultimately follow a model similar to what we're doing in Cheviot, where we can issue a competitive RFP and attract a developer to the site. So the vision would be a catalytic redevelopment of this highly visible landmark in the business district. We worked with Lockland to prepare a 2025 EIP grant application, for which it received a $290,000 award for acquisition of this historic bank building. So the plan would be to seek further grant assistance for pre-development work in the form of physical and capital needs assessments and environmental assessments, and potentially further grant assistance to perform capital improvements on the building and then attract a developer. So the Lock site would benefit in turn due to the energy and investment in the business district, and hopefully generate some more visibility there and assist in efforts to get development going there as well. So in addition to our work in the three communities, we've organized what we're calling business blitzes. So these are sort of small business walks in the business districts, with Alloy and county staff visiting small businesses, and essentially with the goal of sharing the resources of the Hamilton County Small Business Office housed in Alloy. Blitzes were held in Mount Healthy last October and in Cheviot this January, and we've had some encouraging results from this. So at our May Hamilton County Small Business Day event, we saw outsized representation from Mount Healthy and Cheviot. So those two communities actually combined to represent 8% of all registrations for the event. So I think we can attribute that to the outreach that we did at the two business blitzes. Finally, just summarizing our impact to date. So CIP has been involved with grant administration and will assist with procurement and project management related to the 2024 CDAP grant in Cheviot for $320,000. And then the proposed Central Station development leverages that grant and the earlier 2021 CRG grant for acquisition of the building into a $1.5 million private investment, and again, the creation of 30 to 40 jobs. In Lockland, again, we received that 2025 EIP grant award of $290,000 for building acquisition. We'll be working towards a closing on that acquisition this fall. We're additionally applying for a Duke Energy Foundation Urban Revitalization Grant for $20,000, which will support those pre-development efforts in paying for physical and capital needs assessments and environmental reports on the building. Finally, in Mount Healthy, we have submitted an application for the Ohio Historic Preservation Pipeline Initiative Grant, which will pay for the work of our consultant to prepare the nomination for listing to the National Register of Historic Places and get those development incentives in place. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much for coming in. It's super exciting to see the results of this. The idea here was to make sure the communities that don't always participate in trying to get grants because they don't have the capacity to even do that, or never mind serve the grants, have the capacity to do it. These are the smaller communities that really need the help. So thank you so much for this work. It's great to see the examples. Yeah, I will look forward to the brewery tour when that happens next. Thank you. Thanks so much to both of you. Commissioner Summer-Dumas.
Thank you so much for the presentation and hard work that you have been doing. I just had a couple comments. I noticed there were nine communities that were eligible to be receiving funding. Only 5 submitted, which means there were 4 of them who did not submit at all. So you talked a little bit about outreach, and so I'm not sure why they didn't submit, but I'd like to. Maybe you want to find out why they didn't, but we picked 3 of the 5 that submitted. So the ones that were not chosen, Lincoln Heights and North College Hill, this time anyway. So do you have like a graph or something about why those 2 entities did not receive any funding?
Yes, the county actually, in the report to the commissioners, outlined the reasons. So with Lincoln Heights, they actually received a very large grant the prior year. CIP was funded with around $1 million. Okay. They had unexpended funds at that point. And then with North College Hill, they wanted help with their comprehensive plan, and it had not been adopted yet, and they really didn't identify specific projects. Okay. And one thing I wanted to mention as well is we are working, for example, in Mount Healthy, we are working very closely with their CIC, which is volunteers, so they even need the capacity given their successful CIC. So.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Reese?
Yeah, I just wanted, I love this. I think this is so important because if we're going to have one Hamilton County, we can't let municipalities just crumble out there. And there's a lot of needs. So I appreciate it, and I like the fact that we're building a relationship. It's not just send the application in, we vote for it, and then you're on your own. So it's good that we're helping walk them through and be a part of this process. So it's great.
All right, thank you both for coming in. Really appreciate it. That concludes our agenda. I'm going to motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer-Dumas?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
Oh, you